I knew we weren't supposed to kill, shoot people, but I was forced to do it. It was my job, and we did it. My name is Dewain Bill Ridenour. I was born and raised in Muscatine, Iowa, the eastern part of Iowa, until I was drafted and went in the military. It was on a Sunday afternoon when we got the message that Pearl Harbor had been hit. And I was very, very shocked, of course, to hear all the things. And I knew later, I knew a very good friend that I went to high school with was on the battleship Arizona. And I knew that, and it was very, very shocking to me to have that and hear that happen. Well, we, of course, got drafted. We did have a choice of getting into the Navy. But I thought, well, I'll just go ahead and stay. And I didn't like the water. And so I didn't know how to swim yet, so I just took the Army. Well, at first, when I was, after my basic training in San Diego, in Camp Callan, they sent me along with 5 other men to San Diego to be in the Coast Guard, to watch the coast from enemy attacks. There again, I lucked out, because I was in the headquarters department, and I drove a truck. I drove all over San Diego, and we went out to the desert and took infantry training, and I was really fortunate to be picked to do that. In 1944, I went to Livingston, Louisiana, Camp Alexander, to be in infantry advanced training, combat training. And then they sent me to Fort Meade, Maryland, to go to Europe. But at that time, the war was ending down in Europe, so they switched and sent me across the country on a troop train to Camp Stoneman, California, which is it's over by Oakland. And so I was in the port of embarkation there, and we loaded on the ship at Pier 7 in San Francisco, and we shipped out from there. We landed on Leyte, and I was a rifleman, but I was trained to be a mechanic on 40 millimeter guns, and also for trucks and jeeps, different equipment. That was my training. But as we boarded a Higgins barge to invade the beach in Leyte, I think it was Tacloban, Leyte, and as we was going, and the gates went down to the Higgins boat, and we all went ashore. The boat was just packed with men that I had met only just very short time. Some of them I didn't even know. But we hit the water, about 2.5 feet of water, and the man right next to me was an automatic rifle machine gunner. He got hit. Just as he came off of the barge, he got hit. My name was called Ridenour. I knew what to do. So I had to grab this 40 millimeter machine gun and rush to the beach. And as we hit the beach, we hit the sand. And it was just fortunate that I never got hit. I prayed to God to save my life. I never, ever have felt that feeling before. I was scared to death, but I kept going on. It was a feeling that you can't imagine what it was like. I knew we weren't supposed to kill, shoot people, but I was forced to do it. It was my job, and we did it. And I have nightmares today thinking of the times that we went through at that time. And, as when we were in Cebu, it was not only the battles of, but it was clearing the island of all Japanese, and they were embedded in caves. Cebu is a long, narrow island, and it has a mountain running from north to south. And they have caves all the way through from one side to the other side. And that's where these Japanese were embedded in there. And it was their homes. So we had machine guns, we had flamethrowers. And all we was shooting at was movement. When they came out of those caves, it could have been men, women, and children. And those are the things that it's never left me. I keep thinking of that. I have nightmares yet after all these years. It's one of a terrible, terrible thing. As I mentioned, I prayed to God to save my life. And I said, Lord God, help me, save my life. I need you now. And I kept thinking of that. And the more I kept thinking of that, I knew what I had to do, and the more strength I got to go forward of thinking of what I had to do. As I say, it's something we don't ever want to do, but we was in the military. We either joined up or were drafted. At that time, everybody was in the military or getting in the military, or there was women that went to work in the aircraft industry, shipbuilding, Detroit. Everything switched over to the military operations. And if it wasn't for the women that went to work back then, we would have never won the war. They because of their willingness to go to work, we won the war, because all the men was being enlisting and being drafted into the military. June the 13th, my son Richard was born back in Muscatine, Iowa, to my wife Elizabeth. They sent a message and a telegram to me immediately that day on June the 13th, 1945. It was about 3 weeks before I got a message that I had a son. And then I didn't get the message. It was a handwritten letter from my wife that they wrote every day, but because of the censorship, everything was censored and lost. The mail was lost, never got the word, but finally it came through. And so it wasn't until after I came home, about 9 months after the end of the war, till I saw him for the first time. They loaded us on LSDs to go to Tokyo to invade Tokyo's homeland. And we got the message that our division, the Americal division, would be going into Tokyo. President Roosevelt had died in April the 12th, that year, 1945. Harry S. Truman, our new president, took over, and it was his decision to go to Tokyo and drop the 2 atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They dropped the first atomic bomb on Hiroshima, and we were on our way on these LSDs to invade Tokyo at that time. At that time, just before we got closer to Tokyo, the Japanese decided to surrender. But we didn't know that. We kept, we were prepared to go into Tokyo fighting. And we didn't know that until we pulled into Tokyo Bay itself and saw the battleship Missouri, where they were signing the peace treaty with General MacArthur and all the dignitaries, and the bay was just full of ships. And so this was what it was happening. And then they informed us that we was at peace. So when they said, now we're going to go to shore, and you'll be based at Yokohama. the Navy base there. And so, but remember, we are at peace. Don't you say a bad thing about the Japanese. Don't look at them like you're mad at them or anything. It was quite a decision, quite a change that we had to go through after what has happened. But we did it. And I think that the Japanese were just as happy that the war was over as we were. They didn't want to fight, but they were forced to. This was their rules. This was what the government stood for. They used to train their young men, young boys, going to school. First thing was about war back then. And they even taught it in elementary school. And so anyway, it was a blessing, and on both sides. After about 9 months, they called me and they said, "We would now you can enlist and stay in the Army, and it'd be good to be in your career. You'll be in the Army, and you can work yourself up in the Army." And I said, "No, I want I want to go home," and so I was discharged, and I got home it was the first part of March in 1946 when I got home. It was so good. It was so good to come back home, and I tell you, to see my son, which is about a year old. He was about 11 months old when I got to see him, about 10 months old when I got to see him for the first time. What a blessing. I tell you, it was wonderful.